To be completely honest, there's not much I remember from eighth grade. For me, that was the year that the COVID-19 pandemic put me in Zoom classes for 27 weeks. And truthfully, I was probably only awake for about the first three. However, there is one Zoom class that out of the 400 I attended, I will probably never forget, where I turn on my computer, half asleep, on a random Thursday in January, somehow entirely unaware of the devastating events that took place the day before. And my US history teacher was the first to tell me that then yesterday was one of the darkest days of our democracy, one that would undoubtedly be included in future history textbooks for her class. That day was January 6, 2021. The insurrection at the US Capitol building, which was an inflection point for extremism in America, was largely motivated by false, widespread claims of voter fraud. Following the attack, new voting legislation, including the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would strengthen the government's ability to respond to voting discrimination, and the Freedom to Vote Act, which would counteract anti-democratic state laws that disadvantaged underrepresented communities, all failed to be approved. As League of Women Voters President Deborah Ann Turner articulated in response, once again, the Senate has failed to do its job to protect the voting freedoms of all Americans, allowing unbridled attacks on our voting rights to continue. Now, over a month after the 2-year anniversary of the insurrection, and at a time where a lack of political will remains prevalent, I find it imperative that we answer the fundamental question: how can we, as ordinary citizens, help protect and expand voting rights for all? At the organization level, numerous nonprofits and grassroots groups have been leading the way in the expansion of voting rights. These groups often focus on reaching out to marginalized communities and individuals who may face barriers to voting, such as language or lack of transportation. As Katie Gluick expounded in her December 12th New York Times article, the Pro-Democracy Center and the Pro-Democracy Campaign quietly spent $32 million during the recent midterm election, rallying voters behind voting rights. The funds were largely given to state and local organizations that focused on expanding access to the ballot and mobilizing underrepresented groups. Getting involved in voting rights organizations, others of which include the American Civil Liberties Union, which in the past has challenged voting laws that disproportionately affect certain groups, or the League of Women Voters, which works to educate citizens about their rights and responsibilities as voters, has helped countless people's voices be heard, a collective effort that has echoed across the nation. Communities are also making a significant effort, one through which promising changes are being made at the state level. Supporting policies and legislation that aim to improve access to the ballot has proved crucial in our ongoing fight to expand voting rights. For instance, a voting rights coalition called Promote the Vote in Michigan received a $250,000 grant from the Pro-Democracy Campaign. This community association mandated at least 9 days of early voting, thereby expanding access to absentee voting. As the Pro-Democracy Campaign's lead strategist David Donnelly explained, the collective efforts of the community could turn what state leaders believed possible into a reality. However, arguably the group with the most unique opportunity to shape voting rights in America is young voters, because, as it turns out, the future of our democracy lies in the hands of our future generations. And many are already taking this responsibility seriously by getting involved in organizations and campaigns that speak out against voter suppression. Moreover, as NPR on November 10th of last year noted, about 27% of American citizens between the ages of 18 and 29 cast a ballot in the recent midterm election, marking the second highest turnout among voters under 30 in the past 3 decades. As Allison Gash and Daniel Titchener of the Washington Post put best, Gen Z is demonstrating that youth mobilization can leave its mark in movement activism and the voting booth, a 1-2 punch that could transform American politics. Young voters are proof that citizens of all ages have the opportunity to get involved in this matter, and by exercising their voting rights and encouraging others to do the same, have the capacity to create lasting change. The current political atmosphere surrounding voting rights in America is far from ideal. But from dedicated communities to frustrated youth activists, efforts are being made right now to ensure that the dreadful events of 2 years ago are an anomaly. It's clear that in order to protect and expand voting rights in America, participation of organizations, communities, and individuals at all levels is indispensable. So, while it was hard for me to stay awake and even harder to get myself to participate during online school, when it comes to our voting rights, it is imperative that citizens of all ages, including Gen Z, stay informed, get involved, and most importantly, speak up to ensure that all Americans have the right to have their voices heard at the ballot box. Thank you.